Homeless boy stops millionaire. Don't drive. Your wife cut the brakes. What happens next is shocking. If you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Ethan Caldwell stood in the vast living room of his sprawling mansion, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing a view of perfectly manicured gardens and a glistening infinity pool. At 42, he had everything most people could only dream of: wealth, influence, and the respect of an entire city. To the outside world, Ethan's life was flawless. Beside him, his wife, Victoria, sipped a glass of champagne, her elegant figure draped in designer silk. She smiled, but there was something guarded in her expression, something Ethan had never noticed before. "Is this paradise, Ethan?" Victoria asked softly, her voice almost drowned out by the crackling fireplace. Ethan turned to her, his face breaking into a confident smile. "It's everything I've ever worked for, and it's just the beginning for us." He wrapped an arm around her shoulder, gazing out at the empire he had built with relentless drive and countless sleepless nights. For Ethan, success wasn't just a goal, it was his identity. "I've made sure we have everything we could ever need," he said, his tone filled with pride. "This life, this home, it's all for us, Victoria. For our future." Victoria nodded, her polished demeanor unwavering, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something Ethan couldn't place. He didn't notice, too caught up in his own thoughts about his next business conquest. Later that evening, Ethan approached her with an air of excitement. "Let's go out for dinner tonight," he said, holding up his phone. "I've booked us a table at that place you love. You deserve the best." Victoria smiled faintly, accepting the offer with a graceful nod. "Of course, Ethan," she replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. But as she turned away, her expression hardened for just a moment, a flash of disdain that went unnoticed by her husband. For Ethan, Victoria was the perfect partner, a poised and supportive woman who completed the picture of his ideal life. He believed in loyalty, in building something lasting and true. What he didn't see was that cracks had already formed beneath the surface of his so-called perfect world. To Ethan, Victoria's frequent solo outings were simply her way of enjoying some independence. When she claimed she was heading to the movies or meeting friends, he would smile and say, "Enjoy yourself, my love." He believed her without question, his mind always preoccupied with business deals and corporate strategies. But Victoria wasn't going to the movies. Unbeknownst to Ethan, her evenings often ended in a supermarket parking lot a few miles from their mansion. There, in the shadows of dim streetlights, she would meet someone Ethan trusted more than anyone else in the world, his younger brother, Damon. The two shared a secret that could shatter Ethan's carefully crafted paradise. The supermarket parking lot was dimly lit, the harsh glow of a few scattered lights casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Victoria pulled up in her sleek black car, her movements precise as she adjusted the rearview mirror. She scanned the lot carefully, her heart pounding despite her outward calm. Moments later, a figure emerged from the shadows. Damon Caldwell, Ethan's younger brother, approached her car with a purposeful stride. He was lean and sharp-featured, his dark eyes reflecting an intensity that matched Victoria's. Victoria stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice low but firm. Damon nodded, his expression unreadable. "Everything's in place. Tomorrow morning, when he takes the car for that meeting, it'll look like an accident. No one will suspect a thing." Victoria's lips curled into a faint smile, though her eyes were cold. "Good. It's about time we stopped living in his shadow." Damon leaned against a nearby post, his arms crossed. "Do you think he suspects anything, Ethan?" "He's too busy chasing deals and perfecting his little empire to notice anything outside his world," Victoria replied, her voice tinged with disdain. "He doesn't see me. He doesn't see anyone but himself." For Victoria and Damon, this plan wasn't just about freedom. It was about claiming what they believed was rightfully theirs. They had spent months plotting, meeting in secret to craft what they thought was a flawless plan. Damon, who had access to Ethan's garage, had taken care of tampering with the brakes, ensuring that Ethan's car would fail at precisely the right moment. As they finalized the details, they didn't notice a pair of watchful eyes nearby. Huddled behind a row of parked cars, a boy no older than 12 crouched in the shadows. Alex, a street-smart kid with an uncanny knack for reading people, had been watching them since the moment Victoria arrived. His sharp ears caught every word, his heart sinking as he pieced together their plan. He didn't know who Ethan Caldwell was, but he understood enough to know that a man's life was at stake. When Victoria and Damon parted ways, Alex remained hidden, his mind racing. He had grown up on the streets, invisible to most people, but he couldn't ignore what he'd heard. As Victoria drove away, Alex whispered to himself, "I have to do something. If I don't, he's going to die." Alex stood frozen in the parking lot, his small frame pressed against the cold steel of a parked car. His mind raced as he replayed the conversation he had overheard between Victoria and Damon. Every word they exchanged felt heavier with the realization of its meaning. Someone's life was on the line. He had spent most of his short life on the streets, learning to survive in a world that barely noticed him. But this wasn't like stealing scraps of food or dodging security guards. This was about saving a life. "I can't let this happen," Alex muttered to himself. His breath fogged in the chilly night air as he watched Victoria's car disappear into the distance. With a surge of determination, Alex made his decision. He would follow her, find out where this Ethan Caldwell lived, and warn him before it was too late. Keeping to the shadows, Alex trailed Victoria's car through the winding streets of the upscale neighborhood. The contrast between the glimmering mansions and his own life on the streets was stark, almost surreal. But Alex didn't have time to dwell on that. He had a mission now. Victoria's car slowed as she approached the gates of a sprawling estate. Alex ducked behind a tree, watching as she pressed a button on the gate's intercom. The wrought iron gates swung open, and she drove inside without hesitation. Alex crept closer, his heart pounding as he got his first look at Ethan Caldwell's mansion. The towering structure was illuminated by golden lights, its grandeur intimidating even from a distance. Alex felt a pang of doubt. Will he even listen to me? Pushing the thought aside, Alex clenched his fists. He had to try. He couldn't walk away knowing what he did. As the gates closed behind Victoria, Alex crouched in the shadows of the trees, studying the layout of the property. He spotted the massive garage, the sleek cars parked in the driveway, and the warm glow of lights coming from the windows. "This guy has no idea what's coming," Alex whispered, his voice tinged with urgency. Alex spent the night hidden in the cold, keeping his eyes on the mansion. He knew he couldn't just waltz up to the door and demand to speak to a man like Ethan Caldwell. No one would believe a scruffy, homeless kid had anything important to say. But as dawn approached, Alex spotted his chance. A car rolled out of the garage, and a man stepped outside, his sharp suit and confident stride making it clear this was Ethan Caldwell. Summoning every ounce of courage, Alex darted toward the gate, his small frame slipping through an opening before the sensors could close it completely. He ran toward Ethan, shouting, "Wait, please, you have to listen to me." Ethan turned, startled by the sight of the ragged boy running toward him. He frowned, his hand instinctively reaching for his phone. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" "Mr. Caldwell, please, it's about your car," Alex shouted, out of breath but desperate. Ethan's frown deepened. "What about my car? And how did you get in here?" "I know it sounds crazy, but I overheard something last night. Someone's tampered with your brakes. They're planning to make it look like an accident." Alex's words tumbled out in a rush. Ethan stared at him, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "You expect me to believe that? A random kid showing up on my property with a wild story?" "I'm not lying," Alex pleaded, his voice breaking. "Please, just check the car. If I'm wrong, I'll leave and never bother you again. But if I'm right..." Something in Alex's voice, the desperation, the fear, made Ethan pause. Against his better judgment, he walked over to the car and opened the hood. Alex watched anxiously, his heart pounding as Ethan inspected the vehicle. Seconds felt like hours until Ethan's expression changed, his face darkening with realization. "They cut the brake line," Ethan murmured, his voice barely audible. He looked back at Alex, a mixture of disbelief and gratitude in his eyes. "You just saved my life." Ethan stood frozen beside his car, the severed brake line glaring at him like an accusation. His mind raced, but no matter how hard he tried to make sense of it, there was only one conclusion. Someone wanted him dead. He turned to Alex, the boy who had risked everything to warn him. For a moment, Ethan couldn't find the words. The kid's face was pale, his wide eyes a mix of fear and determination. "You knew about this," Ethan said finally, his voice low but steady. "How?" Alex swallowed hard. "I overheard them. Last night, in the parking lot. A woman and a man. They were talking about making it look like an accident. They said you'd be driving this car this morning." Ethan's stomach churned. He didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were falling into place. A woman. A man. Someone close enough to know his schedule and access his car. His thoughts immediately turned to Victoria and his brother Damon. It couldn't be them, could it? Ethan looked at Alex, his expression hardening. "Do you know who they were?" Alex hesitated, shifting on his feet. "I don't know their names, but the woman was talking like she was really close to you. And the guy, he called her Victoria." The name hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He felt his legs weaken as the weight of the truth sank in. Victoria, his wife, the woman he had built his empire for. And Damon, his own brother. The betrayal cut deeper than anything he had ever experienced. Ethan clenched his fists, his mind flashing through countless memories of Victoria and Damon. He had trusted them completely, never doubting their loyalty. And now, they had plotted to kill him. Alex stepped forward cautiously, his small voice cutting through the silence. "What are you going to do, Mr. Caldwell?" Ethan looked down at the boy, his jaw tightening. "First, I'm going to make sure you're safe. Then, I'm going to make them regret ever thinking they could get away with this." Ethan led Alex inside the mansion, the stark contrast between the boy's ragged clothes and the pristine luxury of the home striking both of them. Alex glanced around nervously, feeling out of place among the polished floors and glittering chandeliers. "Stay here," Ethan instructed, motioning to a plush armchair in the corner of his study. "I need to make some calls." Alex nodded, sitting down carefully, as if afraid to damage the expensive furniture. He watched as Ethan paced the room, phone in hand, his voice sharp as he spoke to someone on the other end. "No, I'm not going to the police, not yet," Ethan said. "I need to handle this myself. If I go to them now, they'll deny everything. I need proof." Hanging up, Ethan turned back to Alex, his expression calmer, but no less determined. "Thank you for what you did, Alex. If you hadn't been there, I might not be standing here right now." Alex shrugged, his voice quiet. "I just couldn't let it happen. I know what it's like to feel invisible, like nobody cares. But you don't deserve what they're trying to do to you." Ethan felt a pang of something unfamiliar, gratitude, mixed with guilt. He had spent years focused on building his empire, often overlooking the people around him. And now, it was a boy from the streets who had seen the truth and stepped in to save his life. "Stick with me, kid," Ethan said, placing a firm hand on Alex's shoulder. "We're going to make sure they pay for what they've done." The weight of betrayal hung heavily in the air as Ethan paced his study. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. How could Victoria, the woman he had built his life with, and Damon, his own brother, plot to destroy him? Every memory of their smiles and laughter now felt tainted. Alex sat quietly in the corner, watching Ethan with a mix of awe and concern. He could see the tension in Ethan's shoulders, the way his fists clenched and unclenched as he tried to process everything. "You're sure it was them?" Ethan asked suddenly, his voice sharp as he turned to Alex. The boy nodded quickly. "I heard them say your name. The woman called the man Damon, and she said you'd be driving the car in the morning. They didn't even try to hide it. They thought no one was listening." Ethan exhaled slowly, the confirmation hitting him like a hammer. He leaned against the edge of his desk, his mind racing. This wasn't just an attack on his life. It was an attack on everything he had believed in. "They won't get away with this," he said, his voice low, but filled with resolve. Ethan began to form a plan, his mind moving as quickly as it did during high-stakes business deals. First, he needed to ensure that Victoria and Damon had no idea their plot had been uncovered. If they suspected anything, they might try to run, or worse, come after him again. "They think I'm dead," Ethan muttered, almost to himself. Alex perked up. "What do you mean?" Ethan's eyes sharpened as an idea began to take shape. "We need to make them believe their plan worked. If they think I'm out of the picture, they'll let their guard down. That's when we'll strike." The boy's eyes widened. "You want to fake your own death?" Ethan nodded. "It's the only way to get the upper hand. They need to think they've won." Alex hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'll help. Whatever you need, I'm in." Ethan looked at the boy, a mixture of admiration and gratitude in his eyes. "You've already done more than enough, Alex. But if you're willing, I could use someone like you. Someone who knows how to stay unnoticed." The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Ethan made calls to his most trusted allies, ensuring everything would be set for the elaborate ruse. A controlled fire would be staged with his car, ensuring it looked like a tragic accident. The media would report his death, and Victoria and Damon would believe they had succeeded. Meanwhile, Alex proved to be an invaluable partner. His street smarts and ability to blend into the background made him the perfect observer. He volunteered to keep an eye on Victoria and Damon, ensuring they didn't suspect a thing. "They'll be expecting to hear about the accident," Ethan explained. "Once they do, they'll make their move, probably to claim my assets. That's when we'll catch them." Alex nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "I'll stick to them like glue. They won't know I'm there." As night fell, Ethan and Alex stood in the garage, finalizing the details. The boy watched in awe as Ethan methodically laid out the plan, his calm demeanor belying the storm of emotions he must have been feeling. "You're really smart, you know that," Alex said, breaking the silence. Ethan glanced at him, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "And you're really brave. I don't know many people who would have done what you did." Alex shrugged, looking down at his worn shoes. I don't like seeing bad people win." Ethan's smile grew, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Neither do I, Alex. Neither do I." The two shared a quiet moment, the unlikely pair united by a shared sense of justice. For Ethan, this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming his life and confronting the darkness that had been lurking in his own home. The following morning, the air around Ethan's mansion buzzed with carefully orchestrated chaos. The scene had been set with precision. A fire had consumed Ethan's luxury car on a desolate stretch of road. To the outside world, it looked like a tragic accident. By the time the charred vehicle was discovered, news of Ethan Caldwell's death spread like wildfire. In the shadows, Ethan and Alex watched the plan unfold. Ethan's jaw was set, his face unreadable as he observed from a hidden vantage point. Beside him, Alex shifted nervously, his wide eyes darting between the fire and Ethan's stoic expression. "Do you think they'll believe it?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They'll believe it," Ethan replied confidently. "They've been waiting for this moment. The minute they think I'm gone, they'll make their move." As expected, the news of Ethan's death reached Victoria and Damon within hours. Victoria, ever the actress, maintained a carefully calculated expression of grief as she received the news. But behind closed doors, her mask slipped. In their next meeting at Damon's downtown apartment, the two conspirators allowed themselves a rare moment of celebration. "It's done," Victoria said, her voice laced with satisfaction. "All that's left is for the will to be read, and we'll have everything." Damon smirked, pouring them both a glass of champagne. "To our new lives," he said, raising his glass. Unbeknownst to them, Alex was perched outside the window, hidden among the fire escapes. His sharp ears caught every word, and he mentally recorded each detail for Ethan. "They're already talking about your will," Alex reported later that evening, his face serious as he relayed what he had overheard. "They're confident. They think they've won." Ethan's expression darkened, his voice cold. "Let them think that. The higher they climb, the harder they'll fall." Over the next few days, Alex continued to shadow Victoria and Damon, reporting their every move. They visited banks, consulted lawyers, and began to discuss how to split Ethan's assets. Each action they took played directly into Ethan's hands, strengthening the case he was building against them. Meanwhile, Ethan worked behind the scenes with his most trusted confidants. He gathered evidence, aligned his legal team, and prepared for the moment when Victoria and Damon's world would come crashing down. "Are you sure this is going to work?" Alex asked one night as they reviewed their plan in Ethan's hidden study. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his steely gaze fixed on the papers in front of him. "It has to," he said simply. "They need to face the consequences of what they've done. Not just to me, but to themselves." Alex nodded, his admiration for Ethan growing with each passing day. Despite the betrayal he had faced, Ethan remained composed, determined to fight back with integrity and precision. The day of the will reading arrived, and Victoria and Damon walked into the lawyer's office, with confidence radiating from their every step. They were greeted by Ethan's lawyer, whose solemn expression betrayed nothing. Alex, observing from a nearby cafe, watched the pair with sharp eyes. "They're acting like they already own the world," he muttered into the phone. Ethan, on the other end of the call, smiled faintly. "Let them enjoy it while it lasts." What Victoria and Damon didn't know was that the will had been amended days before Ethan's staged death, ensuring that their betrayal would be exposed in a way they could never anticipate. As the lawyer began reading the document, Victoria's excitement grew with every mention of Ethan's substantial assets. But when the final clause was revealed, her confidence shattered. To Victoria Caldwell and Damon Caldwell, "You are disinherited for reasons detailed in a separate legal document. Any attempts to contest this shall be considered null and void." Victoria's eyes widened in shock, and Damon's jaw dropped. "What?" Victoria demanded, her voice trembling with disbelief. The lawyer calmly continued, ignoring her outburst. "Furthermore, all assets are to be placed in a trust to benefit charitable causes, managed by a trustee of Ethan Caldwell's choosing." Before Victoria or Damon could process the blow, the office door opened, and Ethan walked in, alive and well. Beside him was Alex, whose small frame seemed to radiate quiet confidence. Victoria and Damon froze, their faces pale as they realized the truth. Ethan had known everything. Ethan's presence in the room was like a thunderclap, the calm confidence in his stride, the steely determination in his eyes. It all spoke volumes before he even said a word. Beside him, Alex stood silently, a steady pillar in the storm that was about to erupt. Victoria's face turned ashen, her meticulously crafted facade crumbling in an instant. "Ethan," she stammered, her voice a mix of disbelief and fear. Damon's reaction was slower, his eyes narrowing as if trying to convince himself this was some kind of elaborate joke. "This isn't possible. We saw the car. We heard." "You heard exactly what I wanted you to hear," Ethan interrupted, his voice cold and precise. "You thought your little plan was flawless. You thought you could take everything I've built and walk away without consequences." Victoria's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her mind scrambled for an explanation, an excuse, anything that could salvage the situation. "Ethan, you have to understand," she began, her voice trembling. "It wasn't like that." "Don't," Ethan snapped, his tone sharper than a blade. "Don't insult me by pretending there's any justification for what you did." He took a step closer, his towering presence making both Victoria and Damon shrink back. The betrayal etched into his features was undeniable, but beneath the anger, there was also deep sadness. "Do you know what the worst part is?" Ethan said, his voice quieter now, almost reflective. "It's not the fact that you plotted to kill me. It's that I trusted you. Both of you. I gave you everything, my loyalty, my respect, my love. And this is how you repay me." Damon finally found his voice, his defensive instincts kicking in. "It wasn't my idea. She dragged me into this." He pointed a shaking finger at Victoria, desperation oozing from every word. "I didn't even want to do it, but she said it was the only way." Victoria turned on him, her eyes blazing with fury. "Oh, don't you dare pin this on me. You were the one who tampered with the brakes. You were the one who—" "Enough!" Ethan's voice cut through the chaos like a whip, silencing them both. "You're both guilty, and you'll both face the consequences." The room was thick with tension as Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a folder. He handed it to the lawyer, who opened it and began reading aloud. "This document contains evidence of your actions, text messages, financial records, even a recording of your conversation in the parking lot," Ethan said, his tone as unyielding as steel. "It's all here. Enough to ensure you'll never see a dime of my fortune, and enough to make sure the authorities know exactly what you tried to do." Victoria's face crumpled as the weight of her actions finally hit her. "Please, Ethan," she pleaded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. We can fix this." "There's no fixing this," Ethan replied, his voice devoid of sympathy. "You made your choice, Victoria, and now you'll live with it." At that moment, the door to the office opened, and two uniformed police officers stepped inside. Victoria and Damon's faces drained of color as the officers approached. "Victoria Caldwell, Damon Caldwell," one of the officers said, pulling out a set of handcuffs. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." As the officers led them away, Victoria thrashed against their grip, her composure gone. "Ethan, please. Don't do this. I loved you. I did this for us." Ethan didn't flinch, his eyes following them until they were out of sight. "You didn't do this for us," he said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "You did it for yourself." When the door finally closed, the room fell silent. Ethan turned to Alex, who had watched everything unfold with a mix of awe and quiet satisfaction. "You were right about them," Ethan said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here." Alex looked up at him, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. "I just wanted to do the right thing." Ethan smiled faintly, the first genuine expression he had worn in days. "And you did. More than you know." The office was quiet now, the echoes of betrayal and confrontation fading into an almost eerie calm. Ethan stood near the window, staring out at the sprawling city skyline. The weight of what had just transpired bore down on him like an anchor. Behind him, Alex shifted awkwardly, unsure of what to say or do. He had been a witness to everything, the lies, the betrayal, the downfall of two people who had been closest to Ethan. Despite his young age, Alex could see the toll it had taken on the man. "They're gone," Alex said softly, breaking the silence. Ethan turned, his expression unreadable. He studied the boy for a moment before nodding. "Yes, they are. But the damage they've done, that's going to take time to fix." Alex hesitated, then spoke again. "At least you're still here. You still have a chance to rebuild." Ethan's lips curved into a faint, almost bittersweet smile. "Wise words for someone your age." The boy shrugged, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Life teaches you things when you don't have much of a choice." Ethan crossed the room and placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. "You taught me something too, Alex. You reminded me that loyalty and courage can come from the most unexpected places. I owe you my life." Alex glanced down, his cheeks flushing slightly. "I didn't do it for anything in return. I just couldn't let them win." "You didn't just stop them," Ethan said, his voice steady. "You gave me the chance to start over. And now, I want to give you the same." Alex's eyes widened, confusion flashing across his face. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want you to stay," Ethan said firmly. "This mansion is too big and too empty. You've been through enough on your own. Let me help you build something better. A future where you don't have to fight for every scrap." Alex blinked, struggling to process Ethan's words. "You want me to live here? Like family?" "Yes, like family," Ethan replied. "You've earned that and so much more. You saved my life, Alex. Now let me give you a life worth living." The transition wasn't easy for either of them. Alex, who had spent years navigating the harsh realities of life on the streets, suddenly found himself in a world of luxury and abundance. The sprawling mansion, with its endless rooms and gleaming surfaces, felt more like a museum than a home. At first, Alex was cautious, unsure how to fit into this new life. He would sit quietly at the edge of the dining table during meals, barely touching the elaborate dishes served to him. He often wandered the mansion late at night, his steps hesitant, as if he feared breaking something. Ethan noticed these things, but he didn't push. Instead, he focused on creating an environment where Alex could feel safe. He showed the boy around the estate, introducing him to staff members and encouraging him to explore the vast library, the home gym, and even the garden. One afternoon, Ethan found Alex in the study, poring over a book on business strategy. The sight brought a rare smile to Ethan's face. "Learning something new?" he asked, leaning against the doorway. Alex looked up, startled. "Yeah, I figured. If I'm going to be part of this, I should know how it all works." Ethan walked over and sat beside him, his tone lighter than it had been in days. "You're already ahead of most people. That curiosity will take you far." The boy smiled shyly, the first hint of confidence breaking through his reserved demeanor. As weeks turned into months, the bond between Ethan and Alex grew stronger. Ethan began to teach Alex the fundamentals of his business empire, not just the numbers and contracts, but the values that drove his success. Respect, responsibility, honesty. Ethan said one evening as they sat in the study. "These are the things that sustain true leadership. If you carry them with you, you'll make a difference in whatever you choose to do." Alex listened intently, his admiration for Ethan growing with every lesson. For the first time in his life, he felt like someone believed in him, truly believed in his potential. Ethan, too, found himself transformed by the relationship. In Alex, he saw a second chance, not just to rebuild his trust in others, but to create a legacy that extended beyond wealth and power. The mansion, once a cold and lonely place, began to fill with warmth again. Their shared meals were filled with laughter, and their conversations spanned everything from business strategies to life lessons. Ethan's heart, once hardened by betrayal, softened in ways he hadn't thought possible. And Alex, who had spent so much of his life surviving, finally found something he had never dared to hope for: a home. Life at the mansion began to settle into a new rhythm, one filled with purpose and mutual respect. For Ethan, the days of focusing solely on business were over. His priorities had shifted, and guiding Alex became a central part of his life. For Alex, every day felt like a new adventure. The boy who had once navigated alleys and backstreets now found himself exploring the halls of a grand estate. But beyond the luxury, it was the mentorship and trust Ethan offered that truly changed Alex's life. "You've got a sharp mind," Ethan told him one morning as they sat in the study. "With the right guidance, you can achieve anything." Alex beamed at the praise, his confidence growing little by little. Ethan had started teaching him about leadership, business ethics, and even how to negotiate. What amazed Alex most was that Ethan treated him like an equal, valuing his thoughts and ideas no matter how small they seemed. One afternoon, as they worked through a set of spreadsheets, Alex hesitated before asking, "Ethan, why are you doing all this? You could have just gone back to your life after everything that happened." Ethan set down his pen, his gaze softening. "Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. All the success in the world doesn't mean anything if you don't have people to share it with. You saved my life, Alex. But more than that, you gave me a reason to rebuild it differently." Alex nodded, the weight of Ethan's words settling over him. He had never imagined that his decision to intervene that night in the parking lot would lead to this, a bond that felt more like family than anything he had ever known. Ethan's renewed focus extended beyond the mansion. Inspired by Alex's journey, he decided to use his resources to help others in similar situations. Together, they began brainstorming ways to support homeless youth and create opportunities for those who had been overlooked by society. "What if we started a mentorship program?" Alex suggested one evening, his voice tentative but excited. "Like something to help kids like me get back on their feet." Ethan smiled, proud of the boy's growing confidence. "I think that's a brilliant idea. And you're going to help me run it?" Alex's eyes widened. "Me? But I don't know how to." "You'll learn," Ethan interrupted, his tone encouraging. "You're smart, Alex. Smarter than you realize. And who better to lead a program like this than someone who's been through it?" The idea quickly took shape. Ethan reached out to his network, securing funding and support for the initiative. Alex, despite his initial doubts, threw himself into the project with the same determination that had driven him to save Ethan's life. They named the program New Horizons, a nod to the fresh starts they both had found. Months later, the first class of participants gathered at the mansion for an orientation. Alex stood nervously at the front of the room, clutching a stack of papers. Ethan watched from the back, offering a reassuring nod. Taking a deep breath, Alex began to speak. I know what it feels like to think no one sees you. To feel like you're invisible, like your life doesn't matter. But I'm here to tell you that it does. You matter. And this is just the beginning of something amazing. The room erupted into applause, and Alex felt a surge of pride. He glanced at Ethan, who gave him a small but approving smile. After the orientation, Alex joined Ethan in the garden, where the two sat under the shade of a sprawling oak tree. You were incredible, Ethan said, clapping him on the back. Alex grinned, his confidence soaring. I had a good teacher. Ethan chuckled, leaning back against the tree. And you're becoming an even better leader. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and solitude, now buzzed with life. It was no longer just Ethan's home. It was a place where lives were transformed, where second chances were given, and where hope flourished. The grand opening of the New Horizons Center was unlike anything the town had ever seen. The once empty building on the edge of the city now gleamed with fresh paint and a new sign that read New Horizons, building futures together. Inside, the energy was electric as people gathered to celebrate what the program had already accomplished and what it promised to do for generations to come. Ethan stood at the front of the packed room, wearing a sharp suit but looking more relaxed than he had in years. His speech had been carefully prepared, but as he looked at the eager faces in the crowd, graduates of the first mentorship program, local business leaders, and supporters, he decided to speak from the heart. A few months ago, my life was turned upside down, Ethan began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I faced betrayal from the people I trusted most. But in the middle of that storm, I found something unexpected, hope. And that hope came from someone I never would have expected. He glanced at Alex, who stood off to the side, looking proud but slightly nervous. This young man reminded me that no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way forward. He showed me that true strength isn't about wealth or power. It's about courage, loyalty, and the willingness to stand up for what's right. The audience erupted in applause as Alex's cheeks turned pink. Ethan waited for the noise to die down before continuing. Today, we're here to celebrate not just a building, but a vision. Vision of a future where everyone has a chance to succeed, no matter where they come from or what they've been through. New Horizons isn't just my legacy. It's Alex's legacy, too. And it's a testament to what we can achieve when we come together. Ethan stepped aside, gesturing for Alex to join him at the podium. The boy hesitated for a moment, then walked up to stand beside him. Alex, Ethan said, his voice warm and full of pride. Would you like to say a few words? Alex looked out at the crowd, taking a deep breath. I never thought I'd be standing here, he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. A year ago, I was just trying to survive, living day by day on the streets. But then I overheard something that gave me the chance to help someone. I didn't know it at the time, but that one choice would change my entire life. The room fell silent, every eye on Alex. This place isn't just about second chances, he continued, his voice growing stronger. It's about believing that no matter how hard life gets, you can find a way out. Someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And now, I want to be that person for others. The crowd rose to their feet, the applause thunderous. Ethan placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, his expression one of pure pride. In the weeks that followed, New Horizons flourished. People from all walks of life came through its doors, finding mentorship, education, and the support they needed to rebuild their lives. Alex threw himself into the work, becoming the heart and soul of the program. He formed bonds with the participants, sharing his own story and inspiring them to fight for their futures. Ethan, meanwhile, found himself transformed by the experience. The cold, calculating businessman he had once been was gone, replaced by a man who valued connection and compassion above all else. One evening, Ethan and Alex sat on the front steps of the mansion, watching the sunset. The orange and pink hues painted the sky, a symbol of the new beginnings they had created together. "You know," Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence, "when I first brought you here, I wasn't sure how it would turn out. But now, I can't imagine my life without you." Alex smiled, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Me neither. This place feels like home now. And you feel like family." Ethan nodded, his chest tightening with emotion. "That's because we are, Alex. And we always will be." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the two of them sat quietly, the weight of their shared journey settling over them like a warm blanket. Ethan had lost everything he thought mattered, only to find something far more valuable, a legacy built not on wealth, but on love, trust, and the power of second chances. And Alex, the boy who once had nothing, now had a future brighter than he'd ever dreamed. Together, they had created something extraordinary, a testament to the idea that even in the darkest moments, hope can shine through. What would you risk for a second chance at life? Let Ethan and Alex's incredible journey inspire you to believe in the power of courage and connection. If their story moved you, share it with someone who might need a little hope today.